Sterile processing is where patient safety begins, but who's preparing the people behind the trays? Today's episode is for students and new techs who think they know what to expect until the real work starts. My guest, Tamika Jones, is a hospital-based SPD trainer in Los Angeles, and she's bringing honest, unfiltered truth about what it really takes to succeed in this field. If you're in school, you're lucky. This episode is your wake-up call. So Tamika Jones is a proud United States Marine Corps veteran turned sterile processing professional with a mission to serve behind the scenes. Tamika works in the greater Los Angeles area where patient safety begins. After transitioning from the military life to healthcare, she found purpose in high stakes, precision driven world of sterile processing, where discipline, attention to detail, and commitment to excellence truly matter. With almost 7 years in the field and certifications like CRCST and CER, she's worked from the decontam room to leading teams through audits, process improvements, and the everyday chaos of SPD Live. In 2024, Tamika officially became a trainer in the field of sterile processing, teaching, educating, and instilling discipline of infection prevention and patient safety. Welcome to the show, Tamika.
Thank you.
We're so glad to have you today. I'm really looking forward to having a great conversation with you today. Tamika, what's one thing most students walk into the department not ready for?
That's pretty honest. Most likely, most of them, they don't understand the level of commitment that it's going to take for them to bring their best self forward in the field. Most people think of sterile processing as just labor intensive, put this tray here, sterilize this container, organize this loaner. But it's actually a lot more to that. You have to learn the nuances of the job, instrumentation, protocols, infection prevention, and understanding the manufacturer's instructions for use, which I'm real big on. I'm a black and white individual. So if it's not an IFU, we are not doing it.
That is so true. The IFU is so important. Where do you see the biggest disconnect between the classroom and the floor?
I have two answers for that. One of the biggest disconnects is that you can't really personalize your instruction plan or teaching plan for each individual student in a classroom setting. You get that more one-on-one, hands-on. And also, most of the time in a classroom, people have expectations or they're not listening. So it's hard to actually always engage and have everyone's full attention in a classroom setting. That's why I do mostly return demonstration. And, we do have competencies that we go by. However, I never sign someone off on competencies just based off of a training. I actually need them to return demonstration, articulate the information back to me so that I know that they really understand how to process that equipment.
Yeah, that's really great. Sounds to me like what you're talking about is understanding the why.
Because most people just think like, oh, well, it doesn't only have to soak for a second. Like, no, there's a reason why we only brush underwater. You can't brush on top. But once you personalize it for them and show them like, how, bioburden and bacteria grows, then they actually, kind of get more of a concept of what's actually happening. So then they understand the reason why we do things. Some people need the reason why. It's not just because I told you so. You should explain always why you do the things you do.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And then what's one thing you wish every SPD student would hear before starting clinicals?
It's kind of cliche, but the one thing that's like really important to me is for them to understand like this is just your starting point. This is not the final destination. There are endless possibilities in sterile processing. You just kind of have to find your niche and see what works for you and figure out where you want to go. Just because you're a tech today doesn't mean you're going to be a tech a year from now or 2 years from now. You can move over into education. You could be an R&D coordinator. There's many avenues, but obviously has to be self-driven, and then with the right mentorship, help you get to where you want to go.
Yeah, that's really good. That's awesome. That's really outstanding. So going from into the next segment from student to tech, how to survive the shift. Some questions that kind of in the context of that. So, what are common struggles do you see with new techs coming out of school?
I don't mean to bash schools. Some schools are good, but there's a lot of schools that people that are actually techs that they've come up with on their own. And it's a little bit of that regurgitating the textbooks to them. And me personally, I don't like that we charge students to teach them the textbook. But I guess I get it. It's a business. But at the same time, I feel like all schools should have more hands-on application. So that way it doesn't be overwhelming when a student first starts.
Yeah, that's really good. There's so many different schools. There's so many reasons why people start sterile processing schools. And back in the days, up until maybe about like 2 months ago, started to help a friend of mine who's supervisor that went to an online program, and up to that point, I really didn't like online programs because I felt like they weren't really giving them the hands-on training, but really tried to understand where they were, really kind of softened my heart to want to support more students who, because the students are not the ones to be at fault. And so sometimes the technicians are just, they were told. So you have flexibility, you have the cheapest, and then you have like the best school, and the one that has the clinical rotations. There's so many different reasons why people go to school. And so I think what you're saying is really, really good. Even like compatibility with mentorship is having a mentor that's really compatible. Even your preceptor that you are able, when you're compatible, it seems as if you're able to have more of a direct. Do you believe being compatible is important as a mentor in sterile processing?
I do. I mean, because I was in education before I came to healthcare. So I worked at a university level. So for me, it's all about like accreditations. So like if you're gonna charge let's say $10,000 for someone to go to sterile processing school, you definitely need to be accredited because anybody can print off a certificate. But back to being compatible, that's definitely really important. And sometimes, personalities clash, so you have to kind of like try to, I would say, redirect the situation or the training to tailor to that trainee's needs because everyone doesn't learn the same way. So you have to be flexible as the trainer or educator.
Yeah, that's super good. Flexibility is really important. I'm not trying to get off topic, but generational intelligence, right? So you have so many different generations who are working together, and then how are you able to relate to that student in a way that you can help them to grasp the concepts behind what you're trying to show them. So I think that's really, really good, and I appreciate your input that you're giving today. This is really excellent.
Thank you.
And then how do you balance giving tough feedback with keeping students motivated?
Now that is very tricky because you definitely have to personalize it per student. So I have two methods that I use. The first one is I'll start with a compliment, give the correction, and then end with a compliment. So that way, you build them up, you kind of, set a little bit of order, but then you also end it where, you're doing exceptional here. We're going to keep doing that. Let's just work on this one thing and all will be well. And then the other one, some people are more direct. I have a couple trainees that they just want the meat and potatoes. They don't want you to take all day to tell them. So I'll start with the correction, but always end with a positive statement.
That's really excellent. I think we use the term the sandwich effect. You compliment. It's because like a sandwich is usually two pieces of bread and then your substance, your meat or your vegetables or whatever. So and then on the outside is the bread. So I think that's really good. That, what you're saying about the complimenting and then constructive criticism and then the complimenting on the other end.
I'm just really big on not tearing someone down. I think you're supposed to leave people better than you found them. So even when correction is needed, you still want to build them back up so they don't feel, devastated or, like they didn't do a good job or they don't know what they're doing or maybe this is not the career for them. Just like, no, this is just a minor hiccup. We're going to correct it this way. Does that work well for you? And then you build them back up and keep it moving.
That's really great. I mean, I love that. Yeah, it's making me think about, my preceptor that I had was someone who was not that. She was very negative. She told me every day I was never going to get hired and was just really, really, was really kind of very difficult to navigate through. But,
It
I
was
remember
discouraging.
it was. But, I look back in retrospect and I had to go back in time and kind of twist the perspective I thought about it because what she did was she really tenderized my heart to want a precept and to want to create a better experience than what I had. And so I used to be very bitter towards it, but now I say thank you because you helped me to prepare my heart to be able to precept. And that's why this episode really meant a lot to me because first reaching out to you and when you really helped me to understand that you're a trainer, I was just like, wow, that's so exciting because that's what I do where I'm at. So it made this episode just really personal to be able to talk to someone who is also, doing what I'm doing and just even here listening through the ears of someone that just is gleaning from your experience. And so it really this episode really does mean a lot to me and I'm learning a lot and taking a lot from this episode. So I'm pretty confident whoever listens to this or is listening to this is gonna get a lot from it as well. So I really am grateful. So
That's
thank you.
awesome. You're so very welcome. Anything I can do to help. It's about the
That's
greater
great.
mission.
That's right. And then can you share a story of a student or a trainee who struggled but then turned things around?
Yes, I can. I'm actually going to make it a little bit more personable if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
So what happened was I was just a tech, and there was a few of us techs. I was a preceptor at the time, but did not have the actual title of trainer yet. So a lot of us was competing for the position for trainer, and obviously I was one of the ones that was picked. And one of the guys that didn't get picked, he felt like I took his position because he had been there longer. I mean, I could have been upset about it, or we could have not talk to each other because, he was upset because he didn't get it. But what I did was I took that opportunity to help him to see like where do you need to improve and what areas you need help in. And so I kind of just mentored him. And then when the next position came available, I prepped him, I quizzed him, I taught him everything he needed to know, and he got it.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. I mean, like creating the opportunity and willing to invest in preparing someone is that's really good. And it shows how selfless you were, really, really great qualities to have.
Yeah, I think it's really all about perspective because I could have been like, "Well, I got the job and you didn't," but that's not my heart. So my thing was like, "I'm sorry you felt this way, but let's see how I can help you." I mean, I understand you've been here longer than me, but I'm a bookworm. I be reading those IFUs when I don't have to. I'm checking SOPs when I don't have to because I don't want to get anyone sick. I don't want anyone to die on my watch. So now he's a mini me.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, no, that's really great. And it really does show, your character. And that's the thing about sterile processing. And, the reason why I started this podcast was because I remember being in the pandemic and I remember dealing with I was at a hospital where it was very toxic. We had really, not the best leadership. And I just remember seeing, different podcasts that were really strong on education, but just wondering like, man, I wish there was a podcast I could put in my ear that really was encouraging people through the challenges that they deal with on a regular basis. And that's kind of what created the why is that's why I like to call it sterilization station and empowerment podcast for sterile processing, because I really want to empower people by giving them seeds, something to think about that they can chew on. You ever sit there and think about a thought and you keep thinking about it and this is growing and the more it just keeps growing. And so wanted to just be able to infuse sterile processing with positivity through not just, these major subject matter experts, like the Hank Balches and the Jill Barons and, people like Arlene Bush and them, but the everyday people, right? The people like yourself that are doing the work in the trenches, helping to make the department better. And even as a preceptor, how you're influencing a person. And to me, it's not just sterile processing, it's almost like life coaching. You're helping them to prepare, and throughout their career in sterile processing, they're going to look back and say, I remember when Tamika told me this and showed me that. And there's probably things you don't even remember that you said because you felt that it was the right thing to say and you said it and you're mentoring. And now you get that phone call 10 years later and you're like, oh, who's this? And you say, you remember me? And you're like, I think I remember you. And they'll say, remember when you said this? You did something that created something in me that now I'm giving people. So now it's like, you're almost like a grandma, but not a grandma. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
you're giving people to someone and then they're so it's powerful. Mentorship is powerful. I just had a student finish and holding the tears back because they changed me. I grew. I grew through it. So, anyways, I kind of I kind of got a little happy on that one. But anyways, I just want
I totally
that's really
understand.
cool.
I will say this as well, though. Like, I do not just hold it to sterile processing. Right now, I have two individuals that I'm mentoring that work in housekeeping to get them into sterile processing. So I don't think it just has to be in our department. We always should reach back and bring the next person up.
Yeah, that's great. I totally agree with you. I was able to hear about the opportunity for apprenticeships. In California, I worked at Kaiser Permanente and I went through a surgical tech apprenticeship, basically a program. And I heard about this program called, through Futura Health, and they offer apprenticeships. And so I literally got the information from Futura, from a representative, and brought to HR. And now we're rolling out an apprenticeship program at our hospital for sterile processing that's going to extend to surgical tech. And they also offer like pharmacy tech, ER tech, so many different areas. And
That's
so,
awesome.
and the thing about Futura that's really, really cool, and I actually have an episode recorded but not edited yet, because I want to release it because I feel like apprenticeships is really something that can really benefit sterile processing, especially because Futuro is paying for the students to go to school. So they're paying for their schooling through the Work Coalition in California and throughout the United States. And so if you have needs in your department and you have people that want to go to school, they go through Futura, they partner with local schools and then local hospitals to do your externship. And so it's just really cool. You made me think about that because there's a few people in my department that are in our hospital that are in environmental services that want to be sterile processors, and we're now working on this apprenticeship program. So it's pretty fantastic.
Sounds amazing.
I love your energy. That's great. So as we, SPD isn't glamorous. How do you prepare students mentally for the realities of the work?
I really try to make it personal for them. We all have some level of empathy, I hope. Most of us do. So I try to get them to visualize like they're preparing the RMD for their parent or parents or their sibling, a spouse or niece or nephew, because no one wants a child to get sick in the OR. So, like, that really impacts a lot of people. And where I currently work is mostly veterans, and most of us are veterans and we're serving other veterans, and most of us get our care there as well. So there's another level of, I'm doing this for my country, even though I'm actually doing it for the veteran, because there's your brother in arms. Y'all fought together. You went to war together. So you want to give them everything that they possibly that they can get in their surgery, and you want to make sure there's no infections, and you want to just make sure that it's a clean bill of health for them and that their recovery as well. But for those students who are not really interested in that approach, I kind of take a different approach because some people like accolades. They want to be well known. They want to get awards. They want to go on and write policy. So you just find the best tech that's going to help them foster what they like to do and to get them to that point. So that way everyone is being a preceptor at some point, and we're all, fighting for the greater cause and for the bigger mission. It's all one band, one sound. That I say that every day. They get so mad at me at work. I'm like, you already know what I'm about to say, but I do it every day because it's not about us. It's not about our personal feelings. It's about the mission, overall mission. And to have zero infections, I don't think I've been in my hospital almost 7 years. We have not had one infection, not one.
That's amazing. That's really good. I can tell you're very meticulous. I can tell you have a lot of attention to detail, and you take pride a lot in what you do, and that's really commendable. Really appreciate this podcast exposing me to meet people that ordinarily I wouldn't have met, and so learning of your path, your journey, your work skills, your willingness to help people is just it's just outstanding. And how do you teach pride in a job that often goes unnoticed?
One thing I tell people, first and foremost, I don't believe you can teach pride. That's not something you can directly teach, even though people believe it. I think that's like a cliche. But one thing I tell everyone that I work with is that we all can learn from each other. Everyone is valuable. Everyone has something to offer. Everyone has an input. You might see something that I didn't see, and doesn't mean because I'm the trainer that I'm perfect. No one is. We're all human. And then you also have to like create atmospheres that can foster a growth mindset. Those atmospheres have to be tailored to each individually, of course, so that no one does anything without knowing why they're doing it. Whether you're the educator, the trainer, or just some equipment in the unit, there's always a need to know why you're doing it and how to do it. And even if it does go unnoticed, like you have to like have pride in yourself. Like today I put together 20 cases, and out of those 20 cases, none of my instrumentation was missing. So I know for a fact all my surgeries were completed. The doctor didn't have to ask for more RMD because I did my job.
That's great. That's really good. And then what advice do you have for students who are starting to feel discouraged during training?
In training, there's going to be good days and there's definitely going to be bad days. That's definitely undeniable. But when the bad days occur, I mostly just try to help them remind themselves why they chose this profession, why we do what we do, the impact that it has. I think for us in my facility, the bad days are usually when there's a lot of call outs or there's a lot of people sick or things of that nature. But then we go back to the one band, one sound. So now someone's gonna have to work some overtime, or we're going to have to call somebody in early so we don't burn out those that are continuously working overtime. But at the same time, regardless, we want to make sure the mission gets done. Being that I am a military veteran, structure is what I do best. So there's always going to be some type of structure in every hospital, every facility, every shift, because things happen that are unexpected, and you have to have a game plan ready, set, go, because at the end of the day, the mission still has to be accomplished.
Yeah, that's excellent. And we know our mission is sterility. No, that's great. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. for everything that you shared and for your industry experience as well as your passion. And we just want to thank you. And Tamika dropped the realest truths for SPD students because sterile processing doesn't need more bodies, it needs committed professionals. We definitely learned how we can be more committed and enhance our commitment through the question and answer that we had today. And if you're in training, this isn't just about passing your certification, it's about stepping into a role that touches every patient. So stay curious, stay tough. You are definitely needed. And so, once again, Tamika, we really appreciate you for coming on the episode today.
Thank you so very much for having me. I really enjoyed it. My first podcast, so I was a little nervous, but I'm definitely grateful because I do love my job and I give my 110% every single day.
No, absolutely. You did great. I mean, I think you did an outstanding job for your first time. And I mean, your passion and your hunger for sterile processing and doing things right definitely shine through. And so definitely, if you're interested, I would love to, incorporate you into some other episodes in the future. I definitely want to have, some like panel discussions. And if you're interested, would love to invite you back for those.
Definitely.
That sounds great. Thank you for your willingness to continue to participate with Sterilization Station. And if you're listening, students, share this episode with your SPD class or mentor. Write down your biggest takeaway and tag us, with hashtag tough love SPD or hashtag sterilization station. And just in case the viewers out there are interested in reaching out to you, how can they reach out to you?
They can reach me on LinkedIn. I actually don't even know my handle. I think it's just Tamika Jones.
Okay. And no, we'll see if maybe we can find that information and we'll put it into the show notes so you can see that here. You can, as she said, you can find her on LinkedIn. And for trainers or educators, what do you wish students knew sooner? What do you wish students knew sooner? Drop a comment and join the conversation with hashtag SPD Training Truth. So once again, we really appreciate Tamika for coming. Thank you for listening in, and we'll definitely see you everyone in the next episode.